The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison, a prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison, a prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the
Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Natural Freedom League. You can find us at naturalfreedomleague.com. I am your host, John Roeland, here once again with my producer and co-host, Chill Will Keller. What's up, Will?
What's up, my brother? Episode 70, man. We're climbing that ladder pretty good, and we got a hot one today.
Yes, definitely. We have a special guest coming from Arizona. Is that right?
Yeah, we're on the land known as Arizona at this time. Undisclosed location.
All right. Welcome, Paul Unslaved. It was good to have you.
Appreciate you, John, and Will.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for coming on, man. I've been following your journey too with the whole land and stuff. So I know you've been working on that property for a little bit.
Yeah, we're getting it together. You know, we just got a piglet the other day. I don't know if you saw it, but got a potbelly piglet, some chickens, growing some fruit and vegetables, a little bit of cannabis. You know, living the dream, man.
Nice, man.
That's awesome. So as we normally do on our podcast, we like to hear about people's background and how they came, to their truth discovery, kind of hear a little bit about your journey. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I would say when you bring up how we got there, right, or how I got there on the journey to, I guess, if you want to call it consciousness and awareness, I guess we're on the journey to deeper and deeper levels and states of consciousness and awareness of who and what we are, what we're here to do, the world that we live in. Suffering and pain, suffering and pain was definitely a common theme in my life, mostly self-created. It started originally with my mother having a stroke, us going to die, her being paralyzed, drinking alcohol most of my upbringing. A lot of insecurity, a lot of brokenness, a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, forced me to go within, forced me to go deeper with life, right? Beyond the five senses, to cultivate a sixth sense, to get to know myself, how to conduct myself, how to master myself in my inner space in order to achieve peace and serenity, right? In order to co-create in the world with desirable effects. So yeah, that was definitely, for me, if I was to write the novel, write the movie based on the real events, like the Phoenix, man, you have to crash and burn before you rise higher.
Absolutely, man. Suffering can be the greatest teacher, right? Suffering is when pain becomes unbearable. I know that my journey started with suffering as well, self-induced suffering, which made me kind of reset and look with fresh eyes within myself, and then apply that to the natural world and what's going on. So
yeah, in a sense, it's almost like this is an arena, where, like they say, not to be cliche, but we're students of life. We come to this arena to learn to do right, and the way that we learn to do right oftentimes is by doing wrong. In our adolescence, in our immaturity, we do wrong in order to see how that feels and the cause and effect of that, and then we learn to right the ship. Hopefully, if we're living a self-actualized, self-realized, purposeful, meaningful, and guided life, right? Because a lot of times these events happen and they appear to just be random suffering and pain events with no connectivity and no learning process behind it, right? So I guess a lot of the reason I do these broadcasts is to speak to folks who are in those moments of feeling hopeless, suicidal, as I felt in the past, and to come out on the other side and say, well, there's always something more that we can be doing and creating and feeling, but it's going to take some work. It's going to take some understanding. It's going to take some will and some discipline, right? No pun intended. It's going to take some will.
Yeah, man, that's definitely true. I've been following your videos for a little bit, and excuse me, I consider you a wordsmith, intelligent, and I really like what you're doing with your work, holding people accountable and diving deeper into the ability to respond, responsibility. Maybe you can kind of dive in a little bit on kind of how you got more well known. I know there's a couple videos that went pretty viral. Maybe you can talk about just your work in general.
Sure. So some folks will call me an auditor. Many folks will call me many things, but many folks don't ask me. But either way, with that said, I digress. The initial interaction that a lot of folks would know me for, if they know me at all, would be the infamous Valdez video, right? The interaction with one of the public servants on the side of the road, no license, registration, insurance, and plates. I was allowed to continue on traveling. A lot of folks are confused and dismayed by the fact that a public servant would allow a man to travel freely without license, registration, insurance, and plates. So it's an interesting video. It's an interesting comment section. It's an interesting study on psychology and sociology and anthropology, the idea of how a man could rise, redeem himself, repent, turn from his wicked ways, live a righteous lifestyle based in universal God's law, and have a lot of folks be inspired. And also a lot of folks want to condemn, right? Want to see harm done, and that's always, I don't want to necessarily say a scary dynamic, but it's definitely interesting to see your fellow countrymen and women say, why wasn't this guy shot or tased or put in a cage? Because he chose to move his property freely without permission from the state. So again, we're in a time where folks like myself are going to come forward. They're going to rise to the occasion, just simply off the fact that they're tired of not respecting themselves, right? So my lack of self-respect and self-value led me to a place where I had to cultivate a different character and a different meaning in my life. So that's one of the ways, chiefly, that I took that on, that course, was holding public servants accountable. And you were talking to me about getting with Mark at some point. I want to talk with Mark and I want to ask him, what does he believe to be the mechanism that's going to change all this if we do not correct our status and standing? Because whether he or anyone else is willing to admit it or see it, I believe, and unless I'm wrong here, that this all comes down to jurisdiction, words and terms, and our lack of understanding of them, right? I don't know how familiar you are, Will, with the idea of what they will call the sovereign citizen movement. I don't call it that. It's simply going into the words and terms and definitions of U.S. code to find out how we've had our rights taken away and replaced with benefits and privileges in exchange for duties and obligations, right? So I don't know how much you cover that on this show, how much you want to go into that. But, again, like you said, that's one of the ways that I became more well known, is distinguishing the idea between legal and lawful.
Yeah, going on that line of thinking, I had a question for you. Maybe you could describe to us the difference between natural law and common law.
Sure. So I think that a lot of this is a subjective understanding. There may be a codified definition somewhere, but again, that's just some man or woman's understanding. So we're all men and women coming to an understanding of right from wrong. When right from wrong becomes commonplace in a land, it becomes the common law. So I'll give you an example. We have a thing called the Constitution. It's the original contract between man and man's employees, known as public servants, right? There are certain things they can and cannot do. And that obviously had to be more defined and outlined, because people can't seem to figure it out with a simple phrase like pursuit of happiness and or property. So every being essentially based in universal law and then codified in the common law, because it's common for this land that we know as the Constitution. The original contract says we can all pretty much do whatever we please and say whatever we please in the pursuit of our own happiness and property, as long as we don't cause loss, injury, and harm to our fellow man and woman. Now, that's pretty common sense, if you ask me, right? So that's just my take on the idea of common law, common sense, and how it aligns with the commercial law, the contractual law. Because, like I said, originally the people held the government accountable with the original contract that said we can pursue our happiness however we please. You can't interfere. And here we are, we turn around hundreds of years later, they're doing exactly that, right? Trying to just the other day, your constitutional rights to kill a child have been taken away. They're now saying Roe versus Wade, right? So they will come forth with the idea of you having a constitutional right to kill a child when the first line is you have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So they will use the Constitution and the social contract however they please. They'll twist it and turn it. And the average man or woman who calls himself a citizen doesn't understand how any of it works or how it all applies, because they don't care to look at the words and terms and the difference between objectively right and wrong behaviors.
Yeah, well said. And if we reduce everything down, it really does come to like comprehension of words and definitions. Even the word definition means clarity of meaning. So taking that aspect and then your care and your time and attention and embodying what it means to be free and to exercise your rights. I mean, this is almost the root of the issues, is ignorance and lack of knowledge. I mean, someone can increase their awareness just by looking up words alone. So it's just amazing. That's why I call you a wordsmith. It's like, you're really good at defining words, and because we can communicate all day, but comprehension, again, is key. Comprehension on the person conveying the message, but also the receiver of the information as well. So speaking clear and getting down to what the actual meaning of a word is can help us see clearer on concepts.
Well, like you just said, right? Words and terms have a definition that are static, right? They describe a meaning and purpose that is inherent all throughout creation. It's how we can go to a word and a root word back thousands of years and it be applicable. So the word is there meant to communicate an idea that is inherently eternal truth. We are there to come to understand these meanings and these ideas and comport ourselves with that understanding, right? Now, that's an ego checking function. The man or woman would have to come to first understand that there is a power and order, a law beyond themselves and what they want and don't want to be true. Because many folks so willingly are able to ignore the words and terms and definitions or just twist them for however they feel, because again, they have nothing beyond what they want and don't want to be true, which is a toxic ego aspect, right? The universe is not interested what you want or don't want to be true. The bottom line is everything is cause and effect. Everything is purpose and meaning. My people perish for lack of knowledge. If you don't understand cause and effect, purpose and meaning inherently, objectively, you will fall into the subjective trap of solipsism, essentially, is what it is. Right? We're going to remake the world in our own image. We're seeing it now. We're seeing all the cults of science and the other cults trying to, as they always have in different forms, remaking the world in their own image. And it's hell on earth. It's abominations. It's toxicity. It's codependency. It's disempowerment, right? It's never changed because the words and terms, meaning, and the experience has never changed. The Christed being in the scriptures experience of awakening and empowerment and co-creation with the Most High Consciousness is no different than a being today, right? It's just we're draped in a little bit of a different veneer.
So what success have you had with correcting your status?
Success is relative. If you ask somebody, I got my car taken last month. He's on my YouTube. He calls himself the Black Prince. Very appropriate. The Black Prince of the Ether, an archetype of Shaitan. So it's great when people show and tell you who and what they are. They want to take the light and inspiration and righteousness and empowerment out of the world. But success is relative, as I said. They'll say, I got my car taken last month. They put me in handcuffs. They let me back out. I had to wait 20 days to get the car back. They charged me X amount of money. Well, that money is in the process of being returned. It was returned and then refunded. Now it's going to be returned again because we had to do the proper paperwork. I received donations, And the bottom line is the court paperwork they generated was fraudulent, so they can't move forward with the case. So every time that these people try to tell me that I'm going to do something and I don't do it, and there are no consequences than that, other than that I feel more empowered and I get more support, that's success to me, right? So again, it's relative to how you define it. Is it bulletproof? Is it something that works all the time, every time? No, and it shouldn't be, because we have to be kept humble and honest and on our toes, and we have to be kept, grounded and real in the world. And the way you do that is by constantly being challenged, constantly having a threat of someone who's going to take your rights and your ability to move forward, and how you're going to meet that quote unquote threat, right? Or just that challenge, because I don't look at it as a threat. This is me versus me. I'm here to overcome my fears with a sense of faith in what I know to be true. Everything else outside of me is just a manifestation of that test, right?
Yeah. So, after I had gone through all of Mark's work, probably finished it around 2019, 2020, or I'll say I caught up to where he was. I was introduced to the work of Cal Washington. I don't know if you know of his work at all.
I'm not aware of it.
He's from Canada. He basically developed the notice of liability, and he went through a lot of these different sovereign citizen, for lack of a better term, movements, and he got arrested a bunch of times. And throughout his learning process, he discovered commerce, the system of commerce that kind of overlays everything. And he initially was focused on the smart meters. So he figured out that when they basically make you an offer, we're going to put a smart meter on your home. They don't tell you have an option to say no. And he basically developed this document called a notice of liability, where he basically tells them, I'll let you put it on my home if you can prove to me that it's safe, which they can't. And anyway, he had success in terms of it seemed as though people in higher levels of authority started stepping down, and he started to develop it for other issues like 5G, vaccines, forget what else, geoengineering. They basically have created a notice of liability for each one. However, I've been involved with his group for a few years now, and really has been kind of stalled. We interviewed him on an earlier episode, Cal. He's a good guy. I think he has good intentions. I just know that when I saw his work, I sort of thought, this is Mark's, natural law idea, but it's like put into action, right? It's like putting it down on a document, claiming your sovereignty. And
we lost connection with him real quick.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it started to freeze up for a second. We'll give it a little bit. He'll pop back on. He's on the farm, so
yeah, got to deal with that.
In and out. We have Kimberly in the chat. What's up, our good friend Kimberly?
Hi, Kim.
Yeah,
it's good to have Paul on the show. Hopefully we can get into these different approaches of correcting your status, or claiming your sovereignty. I know I've gone through that process a little bit. There's a lot of different approaches, and it's interesting how some work for some people and some don't work for people. It's kind of a very personal exploration
for sure
into these different approaches.
All right.
So yeah, we're having a little bit of signal issues. Sometimes when I do these broadcasts, for some odd reason, my 4G gets cut. So
yeah, it's all good.
It might just be because I'm in the middle of nowhere. Who knows? But you were talking about Cal Washington. I'm not too familiar with him. I've heard his name before. You were talking about the notice of liability. He may or may not have invented that, but the concept of everything being an offer, right, put forth by somebody else, voluntarism. The UCC covers this, right? This is just kind of, again, a common sense understanding that a lot of us were never given. And I believe by design, right? Because certain powers that be don't want us to know how much power that we have with our voice and our ability to just say no in an honorable way. Hey, like you said, you want me to do something, just prove that it's safe. And either way, you're going to take on the commercial, spiritual liability of the event that something goes wrong, right? Because if you're saying something is good and it's real great, you should have no problem standing on it and backing it, right? Putting your ass on the line, essentially, is what we're saying. So, in street vernacular. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is just like a common sense understanding at this point that this is a voluntarist nation. The universe is voluntarist. Inherently, no being has a right to force their contract, their will, their terms and conditions onto somebody else without the consent of the governed, the Declaration of Independence says, right? The consent of the governed. That's the key phrase. It does not mean 60% of slaves voting the other 40% into slavery. It means each and every man and woman has to consent to the code in which that governs them, because code and policy only governs members of group and corporation, which you have to opt in to be a part of, right? And that's where we get the idea of identification, self-identifying. You get pulled over, you identify, you're now part of the corporate structure. They can apply policy and code to you. The same way if you were stopped and you produced a Walmart vest, Walmart's higher ups would apply policy and code to you because you've identified as a member of their corporate structure. That's what a person is under the United States Code, right? There's two persons, natural person and legal person. The all caps version of you on every document you have is a legal person. You've identified yourself as a man with a legal person. It's a corporate entity. So now policy and code can be applied to you.
Yeah, I found with a lot of these different approaches that, some people have success with some, and then some people don't have success with those approaches. And it seems like it's a very personal, maybe that's the wrong term, but a very, individual, like each person has to go on this journey on their own and discover which approach works for them. Like I've actually done the approach of registering the legal name as a way of separating myself from it. So basically, the Minnesota Secretary of State has on their form, they're the only state that allows you to call yourself the name holder as opposed to saying the owner. Sure. You're saying I'm the name holder of John Roeland Wydogan. Now, sure. Now when I that's why I call myself John Roeland now. That's my given name. Wydogan is my surname, which technically means my first name. But when they create the fictitious entity, they reverse it and they put the first name last. And so they made me John Roeland Wydogan. And I don't, I will just say that, like, I used it with the Franchise Tax Board in California, and they stopped sending me notices. I basically told them there is no John Roeland Wydogan. That's a fictitious, business entity that I am the name holder of. I'm John Roeland. My entity has no tax liability, and neither do I. And I haven't heard from them in like 2 or 3 months. So I don't know if it's working, but that's the approach that I found that made the most sense to me. I'm just kind of wondering, like, who you studied, or what you studied to get to where your understanding is, and kind of like maybe describing what your approach is.
Sure, I definitely, have had some influence from Carl Lentz. There's been a few others I can't necessarily call into mind at this time. It all kind of just melts together into an understanding, but a lot of it is just looking at the material, right? Looking at the definitions, what is being put forth, what's actually being communicated, right? Oftentimes people will say they know the law. You'll listen to an attorney say he knows the law. He knows legal policy and legal code. He doesn't know the original public law. He doesn't understand the philosophy of law, so he can't think outside of the box that he was brought up in, right? I've had a lot of attorneys tell me after 20 years, they don't know the law at all. They know legal society policy and how they've been trained to uphold it. So, when it comes to influences, I think the best way to learn, right, regardless of who our influence, we can have a bunch of inspirations and influences. The best way to learn is going and looking at it yourself. Like I said, one thing everyone can go do And don't just go to one thing, like research, right? Research. Go over and over again and search different definitions and sources. Go to, Cornell Law School, go to Black's Law, the original, go to Bouvier's Law Dictionary. Look up these words and terms. What is a person? United States Code says a person is one of two things: the natural man subject to natural law, or the legal person. So which one do you think all of us are when we apply, which means to beg for services? When we register, regis root word means of the king. We've turned private property into public property of the state and of the king, right? So every time that we hit that DMV, that corporate entity that we think is part of government, which is a subsidiary corporation, and we apply and beg for services and turn our private property into the king's property, chances are we're identifying as that corporate entity, right? So again, if you see as I see, even if you don't know a lot about this, if you start to get onto the game, that they're creating a second version of you, an all caps version, which is known as capitis diminutio maxima. It's the maximum diminishment of your capacity. So as man and woman, you're the highest being in this realm. As an all caps entity that you identify as, you are a corporate entity. You now have duties and obligations. You've foregone your rights. And that's why you get benefits and privileges. Social Security is one of them. There's a lot of benefits and privileges to being a slave citizen, but there's a lot of duties and obligations. At some point, one might outweigh the other, and you might want to return to your original status and standing, that of a American national, a man, right, so to speak, who has natural rights straight from the creator. That is what the original constitutional contract states is our state of beingness. And then we have I think it's 13th or 14th Amendment, where they ratified it later on, saying certain powers are delegated over these type of beings, and one of them is a citizen, right? So it's a privileged class, it's known as, and a protected class under the law. And I even have the alternate W-9 forms to prove this. Every time you file as a withholding agent, you're on record as a legal person, defined in U.S. Code as agent or agency. So if you fill out tax forms and you self-identify as a citizen and you're a withholding agent, you now have to follow tax code. So every time, I'm sorry, but I'm going to get on Mark here because this is not a cult of personality, but everybody who yells taxation is theft, you don't seem to understand. You're self-identifying as an agent of United States government, therefore they can apply code to you. If you stop self-identifying as that and uphold the original common law of this land, it makes it a little bit harder. Like you said, they stop messing with you. It makes it a little bit harder for them to apply policy and code. It really is just that simple. It's one big game for our own betterment, for us to get our game together. And this is how they test us, again, using suffering, darkness, slavery, hit the dungeon and learn more about who and what you are, the words and terms that you use, and present yourself like an honorable man.
Spiritual adulthood. We need to stand in that. So with that, we have a question from the chat real quick, if you don't mind. Let's get it on here. Our buddy Blake, I've got a question. Has Paul been targeted at all since the initial video came out?
If I have, I wouldn't choose to view it that way, right? Because first of all, if somebody was to target me, they would only verify how much power and influence that I have. So I take that as a compliment. With that said, if somebody was to target me, all they could do at this point is put me in a cage forever or kill me. Either way, you got to let me back out. Either way, I got to walk away at some point, right? So anybody can do wrong to me however they please. I can't stop that. All I can choose to do is control my response, right? Become response able to whatever the world and life on life's terms presents me. So I could suspect that certain things have happened, but it would be conjecture. It would not be fair to those beings because I cannot prove any of that, right? But I have had a few interactions that would leave one questioning, right? A little bit maybe puzzled about how so many things could come together. But again, the universe is known for bringing coincidences, quote unquote, into effect. So, again, I just choose to see it that whatever will be, will be. If somebody wants to do wrong to me, they're going to do it either way. If I
If you can hear us, Paul, it broke up a little bit. I think you're coming back in. There you go. We got you.
Yeah, I saw that. So yeah, Yeah, you know, the bottom line is, like I said, I see every one of these interactions as just the next challenge. Somebody's going to generate some paperwork and a false claim. I'm going to have to stand on my original claim or my amended claim of who and what I am. And everything else after that, I have to surrender, right? Because, like the Christed being in the scriptures, he became awakened to the fact that policy enforcers, bankers, the Pharisees and Sadducees, you know, the institutions of his time were corrupting the people. He was spreading the word, speaking the truth, ruffling some feathers. It didn't really get bad for him until he got physical with these folks. So I hold out a faith that as long as I don't get physical with these folks and I don't resist them physically, and I just continue to speak the word and the truth and stand on it, that I will be where I need to be when I need to be there, even if that's in a cage, right? Because if you're going to put me there and keep me there, you better be able to substantiate why I'm there, because I don't do anything anymore except smoke reefer. And maybe I eat cookies from time to time, right? A few more cookies than I should from time to time. And I may be known to be attracted. This is going to be crazy and outlandish. I may be known to be attracted to women and be engaged in certain sexual behavior. So if that's frowned upon, if that's demonized, if that's bad and wrong nowadays, you know, who would know? Because just the other day, Christina Aguilera was on stage with a dildo, and they got kids on the laps of drag queens. So who knows what's crazy and wrong nowadays? I don't know much. I just know who and what I am and what I'm here to do and stand on. And like I said, if people want to come for me or do wrong to me, they better have a good reason with themselves and their creator of why they're doing it, right? Other than to test me.
So let me ask you this. What did the founding fathers get right?
The founding fathers got right the idea of, again, they'll say they're racist, they're this, they're that. No man throughout history, that's why I kind of made that tongue-in-cheek joke. We all have aspects of ourselves that may be a little bit rough around the edges. But the bottom line is we can all objectively come to understand right from wrong to a certain degree. All men and women are created equal, right? I don't care who and what you are, what costume you're wearing. All men and women are created equal. We all have to serve a higher truth, a higher philos, right? Philosophy. So this truth, this understanding, this knowledge is what we serve. I kind of got off the track there. I don't even know what you originally asked me. That can happen from time to time. Refocus me. Give it to me again.
I'm just you know, a lot of people are like, you know, oh, the Constitution's not working, whatever. So
yeah, what did they get right? What did they get right? Okay. Codifying the basic understanding of certain things, right? We have a right to say whatever we want to say. We have a right to bear arms. But again, maybe they should have been more specific and put every single solitary thing that produces projectiles. I don't know. Maybe the slaves still wouldn't understand it. But the bottom line is, right, we have all the right to bear arms. We all have a right to say whatever we please. We all have a right to pursue our happiness, whatever we believe that is, as long as we don't harm other people. If you want to smoke crack and you want to pay each other for sex and OnlyFans and engage in all types of things that some folks might say are unethical, but they're not immoral, as long as you're not causing harm to other beings, as long as everything is voluntary and consensual, then yes, that is what a truly universal law, common law, constitutional land looks like. Is it may be unpretty, but it's free. So codifying that understanding, cementing that understanding and putting it forth, I think is the most valuable thing we can take from the founders and their walk, separate from who they are and maybe the mistakes that they make. Because again, man and woman is imperfect, always has been, probably always will be. We're not striving for perfection. We're striving to perfect ourselves, right? In the sense of sticking to what's right from wrong. Empathy, right? This is all just different forms of encoding throughout history. Empathy, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You don't want people to take you as slaves and genocide you. Don't do it to black folks. You know, it's a simple concept. You know, we all need to not identify with our bodily form. We need to identify, if anything, with conceptualization of spirit, who and what we are beyond this physical form, right?
Yeah, man, for sure. Principles, understanding principles, and then applying discipline, and you know that the work within ourselves. It's interesting because you know going through like the self-synthesis or the shadow work of the individual, it's the same process as in the external world of you know ridding tyranny. It's that same process of exposing the shadow, the dark elements, and integrating that. And it's the same thing in the external world. We need to understand who we are, where our rights come from, and know that there is an objective reality. There is a way that reality operates. This is the laws of nature, and we are a part of this. We're not separate from it. And
like
then,
you just said, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought
go ahead.
you was in there. But like you just said, if you want to rid the world of tyranny, rid yourself of tyranny first, right? The same way the being in the scripture said. How many people have these children, these kids? They call them baby goats. That's what a kid is. How many of them have these kids? They'll get in the house, build a house, 4 walls, and tell them, in this house, I'm God. You'll do as I say, not as I do. Not because it's right, but because I said it. Guess what? Your masters and your controllers and enslavers have the same attitude about you. They built 4 walls. They called it a country. They took it over. Now you'll do as they say, not as they do. Not because it's right, but because they said it. And you know what comes on the other end of that? The strap or the medication, the pill, because he ain't acting right. Put him on that ADD meds, right? It's always this coercive, violent infringement upon our ability to choose freely because someone else knows a better way to do it. Guess what? If we did it your way, there'd be no point of us coming here. We have to learn our own way, each being, right?
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah, I feel like at one point I realized, the 2 principles of anarchy, do no harm and self-defense, non-aggression and self-defense. Those are the first and second, the first and second amendments, I guess, right? Sure. The first one is do no harm, right? You can do what you want as long as you're not, violating anybody else. And then the second one is you have a right to defend yourself, so I feel like they definitely encoded those principles of anarchy in the document, and so yeah, I definitely think there's value there. And obviously, I mean, I think that's the thing that's kind of kept us able to pull from that and even understand what natural law is because they put those principles in there.
And let's be clear, right? Anarchy is just self-government, because a lot of folks need to be retrained because they've already been mistrained in their mind. Anarchy is just the mechanism of each individual being using the consciousness that God gave them to govern themselves based on discipline and principle. So all beings in consciousness have the law written within them. They'll say to me, Paul, you're always trying to break the rules. We have to make rules. You don't want to follow rules. There's always rules. There's always law, because I didn't create this creation and I'm subject to the creation. And part of the creation is conscience. Every time I do wrong, I have to feel it. So government, mind control in Latin, is there for folks who cannot govern themselves. When a man comes forward honorably and shows in his presence, just his energy, his beingness, his track record, I'm able to govern myself without causing loss, injury, and harm to others. Get out of my way. You're redundant. Am I back?
You're back. Yeah.
Yeah. So the corporate structure, the idea of government, agent and agency, public servant is only there to regulate folks who clearly don't know who and what they are based on the paperwork they filled out and can't govern themselves based on their actions. And we absolutely see this to be true. So this is another way that I'm not an apologist for government. I understand that everything the universe creates, there's a reason for, right? If we don't want this experience, stop creating the prerequisite for manifesting the effect we know as the experience of government. The way government continues to exist is a bunch of people don't know whether they need 4 masks on and 5 shots. So someone's going to come forth and tell you what you need, right? Learn how to govern yourself. Physician, heal thyself. Comport yourself, conduct yourself in the truth of living life in the way that has always been the eternal way. And you won't need the redundancy of government. But again, the public continues to show over and over again they're not capable or they're unwilling to govern themselves based on universal law. So someone else will help them out with that. And they're going to make a lot of money and get a lot of power doing it. And I guess as they should, right? Everything as it should be. Bane came into the city to destroy it and told all the corporate scum, do you feel in charge now? I am necessary evil, right? So everything in its place as it should be in the time it should be in, because weak men and women create hard times. And that's exactly what we need to become strong men and women again. Suffering and pain is our best teacher if we let it be, right? Rumi said the crack is where the light enters. The Tao 4,000 years ago, I believe, however, whatever the timeline is, thousands of years ago said, the Tao is dark yet it is also radiant. Why? Because he or she lets it be, right? So again, it's all about perspective. It's all about checking our individual emotions. It's all about understanding the inherent order, purpose, meaning, and the arena that we're involved in here, right? The animating contest of liberty, some of the founders referred to it as. What else would there be here to do, right? Everyone's so scared of it. I oftentimes sit back and go, what else would we really be doing here? It's the perfect Hollywood movie and video game. They gave us something all we don't want, but we absolutely need, because what else will we be doing here to get us to rise to the occasion other than decomposing, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, the truth is simple and reduce down. You know, we're here to learn and grow in consciousness and true evolution, spiritual evolution, and the truth is extremely simple. Just like you said, right? We're here to lower entropy, to learn how to act, and through this we can empower ourselves, which is within us all currently and will always be. It just needs to be activated, and we do that through actions. You know, aligning our thoughts, emotions, and actions together and being unified. But it's real simple. A lot of people kind of make it this whole complex journey, when in reality it's completely simple.
Yeah, it's a fairly simple
acting part.
conceptualization. Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a fairly simple conceptualization. We can expound upon it, but the action itself is where people find the most resistance, right? The most challenge, because again, it takes willful action, and it takes discipline. Disciple is the root word, right? So there has to be some level of faith beyond what your bodily intelligence tells you. That's where the 5 sense throws most folks off. They don't have a sixth sense. The 5 sense will mislead you, because you'll only go as far as your fear and uncomfort will take you, which ensures you'll never grow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear your take on, current events, right? Like, we've got one day the Congress comes out and says they're going to pass red flag laws, and, the friggin' liberals get all happy, and conservatives are upset. And then the next day the Supreme Court comes out and supports, conceal carry, the right to conceal carry. I don't know. What's your take on, the way that the media and these stories and the government, puts out these narratives and, seemingly, perfectly set up to divide us, and you see people fall into either camp? What's your take on what's going on, the abortion, being overturned, and how that affects us?
They tell me that QAnon and the White Hat and JFK Jr. and possibly a love child of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who hasn't been claimed officially yet, are coming together to save the world, and that this is all part of the plan. They even go so far as to tell me they have really good sources, and they say that the coming economic collapse is also part of that great plan of QAnon and the White Hat. So they tell us to trust the plan. Obviously, I don't buy into or trust any of that, because to me it would seem that the more we're not doing anything and the more we're waiting for someone to come save us, the more we keep repeating the same condition that got us here. But I'm silly like that, right? So, again, like you said, when we pull back, we could be sarcastic and sardonic. When we pull back from it, it's all divide and conquer. It's all chaos creation in order to create order out of it. I think a lot of us know this. We've studied this. This is the Hegelian dialectic. This is how nations have been ruled since the beginning of time. Humans are generally like cattle. They will graze, they will eat, they will procreate. They will never do much difference other than just live life and want to go to work and do what's right. That might be admirable. That might be a negative quality. It's about perspective. But the culture creators, right, the media manipulators, the ones who organize civilizations rise and fall, they have to have movement. They have to have trends and changes. The way that they effectuate that is by creating a problem, getting the reaction and the effect, and then providing the solution. You've seen it 10 times over the last year. Oh, the cattle are dead in the heat. Good thing they approved the CRISPR cow, genetically modified beef cattle, to come in 3 months ago, right on time. Oh, the Similac is off the shelves. We don't know where to get breast feeding artificial alternatives. Well, Billy Gates does, because he's been working on geoengineering some breast milk over the past year. So we're right on time. Well, that climate change is really bad. Stuff's getting set on fire. It's not directed energy weapons. That's conspiracy theory. Well, we're going to spray the skies with chemtrails, which weren't real, but are real now, but they're for your own good, right? We have all these problems that seem to just come out of nowhere after thousands of years of somehow us just continuing to move on. All of these new age problems that come out of nowhere, and we have all the same, what I've coined the term, usual suspects, who always seem to show up with all the proper solutions as they double, triple, and quadruple their net worth while we're all losing money in a pandemic, quote unquote, right? So ask Elon, ask Billy, ask all the rest of them. And again, they're just low-level front-running players. They're not even the backdrop, but ask them what it's like to double, triple, and quadruple your money with the solutions to problems nobody saw coming, right? I don't know. Maybe they're just really good at what they do, William and Jonathan. Maybe they're just really good at predicting what's coming and providing everybody the solutions. Maybe they're just the modern day heroes, right? Robin Hoods of sorts.
Yeah, they definitely have an understanding of psychology and, these social engineers. And what it comes down to, like you said, divide and conquer, which is ultimately perception management for behavior control. It's interesting when I talk to people on the streets and stuff, and they have a very low awareness of what's going on. They think that this is the only system. Like, well, we've always had government. We got to have government. They can never conceive of anything else. It's just mind blowing to them. And so they just follow in suit, follow in line and do as they're told.
Birds born in a cage think flying is an illness. That's a quote that I always have to go back on because it's absolutely the case, right? I think it was a Hopi sort of saying or prophecy, right? So these are folks who intergenerationally have been bred on a farm. They'll call your insurance company State Farm. You've been bred on a state farm with a number tagged, part of a corporation. So when I tell you there's something outside of Plato's cave, right, beyond those gates, you laugh at me and mock me, and then you may even want to do harm to me and have me locked up, because how dare I destroy your pretty little version of your underground reality, right? They've been giving us these archetypes for thousands of years. Go look into Plato's cave. All a being would have to do is look at that one understanding and then apply it to his modern day reality and see how it all comes into effect, right? Because again, it's one experience. You either have an awakened experience and a conscious life and lifestyle, or you have an ignorant, disempowered, inability to conceive of how everything comes together, right? And again, if you're watching or paying any kind of attention and have any kind of awareness nowadays, you're seeing how the majority of folks everywhere you go don't really know who and what they are and what they're talking about, and don't know it to be true. They're following orders, and the orders are getting us all to a grave very quickly, right? It's not getting better, it's getting worse, because you keep giving your power away to folks who you've always given them away to, and they've always done the same things: kill, steal, and destroy, because that's what they're here to do. Shaitan has the order of this world sewed up, right? And if you want to escape the order of the world, you have to stop buying into the order of the world and buy into the order of the universe, right? There's man's law, and then there's cosmic law. Do the will, and you'll be given a kingdom of heaven. Do your own will, and you'll be given hell on earth, right? You cannot serve two masters. They've been giving us the game for thousands of years. The problem is we have no one to bring it forth and solidify. We have a bunch of people who want to profiteer, or a bunch of folks who think they understand the experience, but have only gone to a certain level. Right? And this is evidenced by the fruit you will know them. If you can't explain your belief and you can't walk it and live it, and it's not demonstrable, it's probably nonsense.
Exactly. And so many people, especially in the new age sector, right? They want to claim enlightenment like it's an end point. Oh, I'm enlightened now. Enlightenment is a journey. It's actually action. It's the action of self-improvement internally, and then applying it to your behavior. And this is a journey, many lifetimes, in my opinion. But there is no end result on enlightenment. And if there is, you wouldn't be in this reality. We would advance or move on. But you just got to have the eyes to see. Let me see. We had a couple comments in here. Put this on. DM Hutchins II says, just to play devil's advocate, the elite might say that they are governing themselves, and the common, that's thief, he corrected it later, common thief might say they are self-governing.
Huh.
Well, I think, let me put that up there again. There's a correct answer, right? It's like both people think they're right, and this is where you get into belief and knowing, right? So the common thief thinks he is self-governing, even though he initiated harm and created that violation, and the elite are saying they're governing themselves, or better yet, it comes down to like moral culpability.
Sure. The Tao has a phrase, what is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? If we look nowadays, you have a lot of people purported to be good, honorable, serving God people, right? A lot of them public servants. And every day they're causing loss, injury, and harm to others in the name of policy and code, right? That's a good man's job, right? That's what they say a bad man is. What is a bad man but a good man's job? What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? Somebody who's been bad, who's done wrong, who's corrected their ways, right? Someone like, I would dare I say myself, who's now turned the corner, come back to teach myself and others how to do what's true and what's right, right? So what is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? Absolutely true throughout the ages, right? We mistake the false for the true and the true for the false oftentimes because of the culture, right? The root word is cult. Once we get away, like Terrence McKenna used to say, culture is not your friend, folks. That was my horrible Terrence McKenna impression.
That's good.
Yeah, we need to get away. We need to strip away the layers of the cultural programmings and conditionings. And in his case, he would advocate for psychedelics. Might be a positive aspect, but again, when you get around these groups, and I've done it, right? I've done it all in a sense, but you get around these groups, and what you tend to find in all the groups is the same mechanism, where they think that one piece is the whole. They mistake a piece for the all, and then that becomes the cult within the destruction of culture, right? So now everyone thinks, well, the answer to everything lies in these plants and herbs and these experiences. No, these are just windows and little pieces to a bigger puzzle, right? So, yeah.
You know who does a great Terrence McKenna impersonation?
Oh, Terrence McKenna?
The Unabomber.
The Unabomber?
For all you conspiracy theorists out there, I have a theory that they're the same person.
Well, there you go. Well, hey, if Alex Jones is Bill Hicks, then why can't Terrence McKenna be the Unabomber? It seems legit.
If you look at it, okay, so the reason why I first thought it was, there's a documentary on Netflix of like the final tapes of the Unabomber, and I'm like listening to it, and I'm like, that's Terrence McKenna,
Yeah.
And then I look at them, and I'm like, they look alike. And then,
well, like they say, there's a thin line between genius and insanity. Like the Joker said, all the madness needs is a little push. So you never know. Maybe he got a bad trip one day and started building bombs.
They were probably both. They definitely were both connected to the CIA. They're both connected to UC Berkeley. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. The timelines fit too. But anyway, people can go down.
But see, now this is a good thing that you brought that up, because it kind of triggers something. This idea that no one can ever be, I believe, completely vetted, right? This is back to what I was talking about before. Let's say Terrence McKenna was a CIA operative. Did he not speak any truth ever one time? You know what I mean? Did he not ever provide a perspective that might be valuable in one's own journey? Because to me, even just that one phrase, the idea of culture is not your friend, is absolutely true as far as I'm concerned. When have we ever seen this culture that we've been born into be a benefit to us rather than a detriment, rather than an impediment for us learning more about who and what we really are and how we want to live, right? This cookie cutter, these lanes of the maze, they put us down. It's cliche, but it absolutely, our biggest strength sometimes is really our biggest weakness. We're going to protect the children. We're going to give them away. We're going to have these institutions. We're going to make sure there's complete order. Well, then there's complete lack of knowledge itself, because the way you learn to do things right is oftentimes by doing them wrong. We need the freedom to make mistakes. We can't live in a completely safe world all the time. This safety fetish that everybody's involved in nowadays.
Yeah, people don't have the right to be 100% safe because of this, because of the natural world, right? We exist in this natural world. There's going to be pain, growth, failure. Failure is just an opportunity to do something right. This is a schoolyard that we exist in. This is just one big schoolyard. But I like what you said about looking at information like Terrence McKenna. You know, people throw the baby out with the bathwater. Oh, with Terrence McKenna, you know, he's an agent, so everything he says, I'm not going to accept any of it, which is complete bullshit. There's a lot of people that you can learn valuable knowledge and philosophy from, even the founding fathers. You know, they're kind of, their philosophy is a stepping stone in consciousness. Do we need to go back there? No, we need to go forward and evolve. But taking information as it is and then discerning from there. So
even the
Absolutely.
Unabomber,
It's not about a cult of personality. So many folks are looking for somebody to worship to have all the answers. It's about learning from each individual man and woman's life experience and communication of that experience, how you want to shape your own.
Yeah, man.
everyone is controlled opposition until no one is.
Yeah, well, listen, that's what's so great about now. Like, people have been so screwed up in the mind and heart, they don't know what's real anymore. So now I'm a Mason, right? I've gotten all this. Paulie's a Mason. You know, he's a plant. How come he hasn't been? I go, dude, I'm having to argue and fight with YouTube every other week, and they're like overturning stuff, which again just shows more of the power of the journey, where nothing is absolute. How much are you advocating for yourself? How much are you speaking up? Most people get banned and just sit there. Oh, they banned me. Did you write to them? Did you tell them who and what you are? Did you make some noise? Did you get on someone's radar to where they go, nah, not that one. Leave them alone. Right? Nah, you want to just stop. It's a lot easier to set yourself up for the victim role. Well, I did something true and what's right, and they banned me, so now here we are. What are you going to do about it? Right? Yeah. So again, if you're not a wrongdoer, you should probably be making some noise. Those who get banned or get punished and then go away and stop doing what they're doing pretty much verified what they were doing is wrong. Because if you really believed in what you were doing, you wouldn't stop it. They say to me, how many times you got to take your car to stop you from moving? I don't know. Because I really believe in what I'm doing. So you may take it 100 times. I may do it 101 times, because that's just a testament to me really believing in what I'm doing and what I'm putting forth. It's separate from the fear you're trying to put on me, right?
Absolutely. And you're standing in wisdom and truth as well, right? I mean, this is the problem with society. People are in that victim mentality. And when you're a victim, you want a savior to come save you. This has been going on for thousands of years. This goes back to the monotheistic mind state of the one savior, the external savior, right? And totally dismissing the philosophy and knowledge that can transfer into wisdom of action within the self. So people always want to play the victim. We see it recently. We see it all the time, really. And you know, internal confusion leads to what? External control. So more enslavement
or paralysis, right? You have a lot of folks, oh, Billy's spraying the skies. Oh, this one's doing that. What are you doing? Are you going up there to undo the spray? Are you putting up tarps and some kind of bubble for us to live in, like they did during, you know, you're going to do the pod people, COVID people, the pod people, bubble people rap? Are you growing food? They're poisoning my food and water. So what are you doing about it? Right? It's so easy for folks to say, I'm woke, I awoke, and now I'm going to look around and see all that's bad and then communicate it to others to keep all of us disempowered, fearful, and paralyzed. It's cool to know what they're doing and cover it like I will on my broadcast. But then I always show people the bottomless pit and remind them they have wings. The only reason this is happening is because we're allowing it and doing nothing. The only reason that evil triumphs is because good men and women do nothing. The cliches have always been there. The meaning and purpose has never changed. The walk has never changed. The question is, what is each individual man and woman doing? And people will only go as far as their fear and uncomfort will let them. When they push past that, this dynamic will shift and will change. If you're governed by fear, you can't be governed by faith. If you're not governed by faith, you will not be entitled to a free and righteous society. This is all spiritual principles first. One comes before the other. You're not going to get it the other way around, and you ain't going to get it. Again, put no faith in earthly man, for whom there is no salvation. Donnie Trump and Uncle Joe ain't going to give you your rights and freedoms back. It ain't going to happen. So keep voting, keep getting that suffering and pain. You know, maybe we'll learn something here while we're here.
Yeah, man. Well said, dude. I'm a big advocate of getting uncomfortable, because that's where the lessons are. That's where the growth is. And when you're in the fear state, right, you got fight, flight, or freeze, like you were saying, paralysis. This is where a lot of people are at. They're in that freeze state. And I mean, look at, everyone's got a phone. Every single person has a phone, pretty much a blanket statement. I would assume every adult, right? I mean, record yourself, speak knowledge and advocate for freedom and this kind of stuff. I think people, they underestimate themselves and haven't came to that self-realization and then self-actualized and jump on the battlefield. And like you said, it's using the voice. The voice is so powerful.
And go there, right? Like, this is the other part where a lot of folks, they're out putting out media, they're creating in the virtual world. But how many folks, again, have recorrected their records and their status? How many folks are still on record with all these corporations identified as the fictitious entity? How many people have put out a broadcast to the world, written and otherwise, saying, here's me correcting the record here today. I am a man. This is the law that I live by. Any infringement upon that will be taken as XYZ, right? Once you've done that process, you corrected not only the Akashic record, you corrected the legal and lawful record. So now we can move to a new space. But a lot of folks who think that this just stops at creating media, to me, I'm not buying into that. We have to be in the courthouses. We have to be on paper putting forth claims. We have to be saying that person's doing this wrong and I'm aware of it and I'm going to put it on the record for all of time, right? People want to throw, again, the baby out with the bathwater. Oh, the system's corrupt. It's corrupt and bad because every man and woman within it either won't use it correctly for whatever reason or don't understand how to use it correctly, right? They want to use it for profit, or they want to misuse it, or don't understand that it was put here for our protection, right? We have the U.S. Code. It's a great thing. Which person are you? Stated here today in court, I'm the natural person. And all of you here today with your costumes on, you all happen to be legal persons. So you're subject to policy and code. I'm subject to natural law. I'm the highest thing in this room right now. If we had 10,000 people who presented in court every day like that, the game is over because there's nothing they could do with us. And once the word gets out, there's going to be no more compliance, right? So I'll tell, whoever wants to come forth the same idea. If you think you're going to throw out common law and legal process and all this stuff, and you think you're just going to understand right from wrong and have no mechanism to actually change what's happening and will continue to happen, it's folly. Because 60 and 70, 80% of folks are not going to get this and stop playing in the system tomorrow overnight. We have to get them, if they're going to be in the system, to use the system as it was intended and stop identifying as something the system can be used against you for.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, our good friend Brian Easterday, he's going to do a presentation on some of this, at the FUNL conference, the FUNL 2 conference. He's talking about, the fact that the founding fathers did create a system that is usable, but it's just been completely corrupted. And if you go back and look at their original writings, that they really worked through a lot of these issues. Specifically, I think he's focusing on the Federalist Papers. Isn't that right, Will?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting.
And the anti-Federalists.
Yeah, sure, but even that, right? Even that is a whole little subculture behind the founders and their little division, right? But beyond that, we have Bouvier's Law Dictionary. We have the Supreme Court decisions, which again is just a decision of a man acting as a public servant. But we have the philosophy of law and what the intent is, right? To serve man and woman and to not be to man and woman's detriment. If any individual man or woman ever perceives government as being a harm or a detriment to them, it becomes illegitimate. If we can just stand on that, I know it sounds crazy that you're going to sit there and tell a wrongdoer in a God costume that they're a wrongdoer. If you could just do that and stand on that, this goes away because then they can't play the game anymore. The only reason a wrongdoer can continue to substantiate his life is because everyone passes by and says, thank you for your service. We're doing this to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
You have to give them away, right? We have to give them away. I don't mean to, to belabor the point, but we have to give, instead of hating cops and bashing cops, we have to give cops a platform they could stand on and feel good about. You want to serve the public, serve the public. We're going to hold you accountable to it. If you do wrong and you interfere with rights, we're going to hold you accountable to it, right? So we don't have to destroy the police and abolish the police and hate on them because, again, that's going to take us to war. What we can do is right the ship, the citizenship. We can right the ship based on the parameters of where we're trying to go. We're trying to go to a place where people who get paid do service to us. Just like when we go to Wendy's and they tell me take 5 shots and put on a mask if you want to be served. That's not how this works. I'm the king in this realm, you will serve me. If you're not, you will have complaints filed upon you. If nobody wants to act upon that, guess what? The universe is going to act upon that. Your whole society is going to go down the drain, and you're going to have to live with that, right? That's how a society becomes reprobate, when nobody cares about anything other than the next paycheck. So, we have to speak that and live that and give people a way out of that. If we do that, people, we become inspired. I've seen it myself. I've had cops who arrested me on the outside of the courthouse steps weeks later, asking me about scripture, telling me they were wrong and wanted to change everything about that courthouse from working there for 20 years because I gave them a way out. I gave them a place for their spirit to be inspired rather than continue to hate on them and be divided from them. Love will take us out of this if we back it with truth and honorability and the way we present it.
Truth, love, freedom, man. That's, we need to become way showers, right? That's all we really are, is just kind of moving the weeds a little bit and show that there's a path. So yeah, man, that was great, dude. That was great. And I agree with you. Absolutely. That's like John and I, we do digital media and stuff, but we do have to get out in the public and get into the natural world and have the energy exchange and try to reach people that way as well. I think it's definitely a combination of things, and we have to do it. If we don't, like you said, we're all consenting to this in some level. I mean, not all of us, but the majority in the aggregate are consenting to slavery.
Are you still there with us, Paul?
Oh, we lost him.
Froze up on us.
Thanks everyone that's in the chats. We got some great comments and stuff. Appreciate everyone hopping on.
Yeah, Paul is really inspirational, and I appreciate all the work he's done. I'm going to tell that to him as soon as he comes back on.
Excellent. And then, yeah, you could check Paul Unslaved out on YouTube under Paul Unslaved. He's on Facebook. It's Paul Unslaved, and he's got his email, consciousnessisrising@gmail.com. And also, here's some donation links. I think we need to support people in the community, people that are speaking truth and morality and natural law. I mean, we need to support these people if you can do it. I think that's good. So Paul's on Cash App, PayPal, Zelle as well. And this will all be in the description. All right, here we go. Nice.
Back.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were just plugging your where we can reach you, your donations, where people can support your work. I was just saying how inspirational you are, and I appreciate everything you've done in educating yourself and then leading by example. I think you're a really good example for people to, step into that power and, like you said, like create a way.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, man. I'm just doing what I believe is true and right, and that's not an attempt for me, to remain humble or to be humble. That's all this is. This is motivated by me being in a repentant state, being in a conscious state, wanting to do what's true and what's right, and not be part of the simulation of creating loss, injury, harm, and chaos any longer. Right? It just feels better to do this rather than that. Oddly enough, it feels better to do good and right things and esteemable things rather than to do bad, wrong, dark, evil, which just means live backward, right? It's better to live with the flow than to live backward. So that's all I'm doing here, and communicating that for others and trying to inspire others and, stop us from going into complete genocide and slavery, because I'm going to have to live through that, So there's a bit of a selfish motive there. In order for me not to live through slavery, we all have to co-create to the same level with certain things, right? It's not Paulie's way, it's the way. So,
Absolutely, man. That's great. Yeah, man. Great information. Highly recommend people going to check out your YouTube and your Facebook. And there's your contact. We're going to have all the information in the links, man. Phenomenal. Like John said, you're inspirational. And that's what we need. We need to be inspired. We're artists here. We don't need leaders. We need artists. Because when you inspire someone, it hits you in the heart and you feel it, and that will motivate you. And definitely take another look, have more self-respect, another look at yourself. And that's great, man. So I really appreciate all your content, brother.
Sure thing, man. We're going to keep doing our thing. So I appreciate you as well.
Yes.
Excellent.
All right, Paul, we'll have to do it again sometime. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you, bud. You too, Will.
Yeah, man. Real quick, we got to do the housekeeping for a second. The conference, FUNL Conference 2, September 10th and 11th. United for Freedom, Focus on Action. Join the Convergence. Got some great lineup of speakers on there. Go to Freedom Under Natural Law to check that out. And then also Shattering the Illusion Conference, a one-day online event about natural law, true anarchy, consciousness, mind control, and the occult, September 24th. Go to shatteringtheillusion.info. And I think that's it. Yeah, man. Great episode. Right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Will.
Next time.
Right on.
And always remember, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth.
Peace.
The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism, and that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we